Welcome. My name is Mr. Basile, and I'm going to explain to you today about the beginning of the Oedipus play. Not so much the play itself, but the events that transpire prior to the play. And we're going to go all the way back to 20 years before the events in the play actually start happening. So that will take us not all the way back to the founding of Thebes. If you want to learn about the founding of Thebes in the Cadmus legend, I suggest you check my other video called the Cadmus Myth, or Mr. Basile retells the Cadmus Myth, something like that. Anyway, I want to get to the start of Oedipus from his birth. So Oedipus is one of the most awful. Let's face it, he has the worst fate of anyone. And you want to talk about terrible fates? You just look in Greek mythology and you look at some of the horrible, awful, terrible fates that have befallen so many mortals, and Oedipus has the worst. His fate is awful. Truly, truly horrifying. Worst, awful. All of our worst fears all rolled into one. I mean, two out of the three biggest laws in humanity are broken by Oedipus. To don't kill your family and don't commit incest. The only thing he doesn't do is eat people. So, out of the top three laws that you find in every culture, every when, everywhere, Oedipus breaks two out of the three. So, it's pretty awful. Anyway, let's get to the beginning. So, in the beginning, Laius and Iokaste, or Iokasta, she's Yo Mama, not Joe Mama. All right. So, anyway, Laius and Iokasta Iokasta is pregnant, and Laius is so excited about this. He really believes that he's going to have a male heir to the throne. And he goes off to the Pythian oracle to find out just how great his son's future is going to be. And here's one of the worst prophecies you could ever hear. He's told that his son will grow up, kill him, and marry his mother, and it's not done yet, have a misbegotten brood of children with her. That's awful. That's so bad, right? So he comes back and he decides, nope, we're going to avoid fate. Now, there's only one character in all of mythology who avoids their fate successfully, and that's Zeus. And that's because Zeus is given this fate, just like his father and his father before him, that his child will be greater than him, which indeed does happen, but the child is his own brainchild, which is Athena, and she ends up being the brainchild because he swallows the mother Metis and tricks her, even though she's got some wisdom, and then she's always granting him wisdom, and Athena's the brainchild, she pops out. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to Oedipus. So they decide they're going to rivet the child's ankles, which if you ever have jeans, you know that those little metal, they're not buttons, but the metal pieces that are stuck together to keep parts of your jeans together, those are rivets. All right, in case you're not familiar with what a rivet may or may not be. So they rivet the child's ankles, basically put a bolt through, clamp it together, right through the child's ankles. We're talking an infant here, so this is pretty sick stuff. And they give it to the shepherd and say, drop this on the mountaintop, Mount Cithaeron to be specific, which will matter as we get into the Oedipus story and really sort of dive into the text of Oedipus itself. Cithaeron will come up repeatedly, so I think it is important to mention the specific mountain. Anyway, they give the child to the shepherd and tell them, drop it off on the mountaintop. If the child lives, then the gods have ordained it so. But they've already taken measures to make sure the child doesn't live, right? Oh, it's so bad. So they give the child to the shepherd. Hey, it's not infanticide if you're not the one directly killing it, right? I mean, if the gods want it to live, it's not my fault the child dies if I drop it on a mountaintop. Twisted thinking, right? Twisted. And so they send the shepherd up to Mount Cithaeron. Now, the shepherd is a good human being, thank goodness, and doesn't want to let the child die. And he sees a fellow shepherd from the neighboring city, Corinth, right? And he gives the child and says, please, just take this child far away from here. And he does. He takes it all the way back to Corinth, across the isthmus, right? And then says to his brings it to his king and queen, Polybus and Merope, and says, here is a child. I know. And they take it because they haven't been able to have children. And they're so excited. And they realize the gods must have given them finally a child. And they raise him as their own. And they name him Oedipus, which incidentally means swollen foot. Intriguing name. Not that it really matters. Most of you probably don't know what the meanings of your own names are, but more on that later. It's not really that big a deal. Anyway, Oedipus, swollen foot, man. He grows up as a prince. Even though he was abandoned to be dead and abandoned on a mountaintop, he lucks out and he gets to grow up as a prince anyway. Talk about such a shifting of fates, right? Then he gets older, and then he overhears somebody speaking about how he's not really his father's child, and he's offended by it. And then he goes off he confronts his parents, and they vehemently deny it. They don't want him to think that he's not of their blood, of their flesh. And so he goes to the Pythian oracle anyway and asks, who are my parents? Tell me of who my family is. And instead of getting the answer he wants, he hears the same oracle his father heard. He is told he's going to kill his father, marry his mother, and have a misbegotten brood of children. And Oedipus freaks out, and similarly to his parents, attempts to avoid his fate and runs away without even getting anywhere near his parents. Flees forever. Runs. And then while he's running, he comes to a place where 3 roads meet. Now, this isn't like modern day times where there's lots of roads. There's very few roads. He gets to the place where 3 roads meet, and there's this carriage there with an old man in the carriage and a couple of attendants around it. And they're really rude to him, and he's a princely, haughty young man, and they tell him to get out of his way. He's like, who the heck do you think you're talking to? They're like, get out of the way, peasant. He's like, I'm not a peasant. You watch what you're doing. And they smack him. And then as he's driving by, Elias kind of cracks him on the side of the head as they whack by. And then Oedipus hulks out, smashes him, kills every man up onto the carriage. The old man comes flying out of the carriage, tumbling over and over, cracks his head on a stone and dies. I wonder who that old man was in the carriage. And so he continues on the road, but he feels awful. He realizes he's committed murder. He's a horrible person. What is wrong with him? Why did he let his anger get away with him like that? And so he resolves himself, no matter where he goes, no matter where he is or who he's among, he's going to keep his anger in check. And he's going to be the kind of person we need in the world. Somebody who helps other people at all costs, who always seeks the truth and does whatever he can to help his fellow man. And then he comes to Thebes. Now, Thebes is in dire straits. The city is dying, more or less, because there is a horrible monster, this creature, it's called the Sphinx. And the Sphinx is lurking and not letting anything in and out of the town or the city of Thebes. And you have to answer the riddle. And if you don't answer the riddle, you're devoured. And you may have heard this riddle. It's one of the most famous riddles of all time. It's called the riddle of the Sphinx. And it's, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 in the evening? And Oedipus gets the riddle from the Sphinx as she leans forward with her beautiful woman's face, her lion's body, and her eagle's wings, all covered in brass. And he thinks, and he says, a man is born, crawls on 4s, walks on 2, and when he's an old man, hobbles about with a cane. And the Sphinx, unable to face the truth, hurls herself off the cliff, and her body breaks all apart and falls to pieces. And this is a common concept with monstrous creatures in mythology, is that they can't handle anything logical because they themselves are so illogical. There's just such a conglomeration of parts and pieces that when things become logical, they can't stand it because they are defeated by logic. And so she is defeated by his logic, and he defeats her riddle. And then comes the reward. The people of Thebes are overjoyed that this no one has come and saved them. And they welcome him into the city, and they say, sir, you must be our king. Our own king has perished while he was out on the road. Please, meet the queen. You should marry our queen. She's beautiful. You love her. And He is welcomed to Thebes. He marries Jocasta. They have children together, sons and daughters, or brother sons and sister daughters. Ooh. So Oedipus and his mommy wife, they continue to rule for 20 years in bliss and peace, and then everything goes to pot. It's gross, it's awful, horrible things are happening. There's death in the streets, there's death in the fields, there's death in their crops, death in the womb of women. Everything is awful. There's a horrible pestilence raging through the city, and that is where the story, or is really rather the play of Oedipus by Sophocles, Oedipus Rex, or Oedipus the King, begins. So I hope this little super fast retelling and contextualization of the Theban legend has given you enough information to dive into the text and get ready to read and study Oedipus. It's an awesome play. It really is. It's so awful, too. I mean, we already know the horrible part. Killed dad, married mom, had kids. But that's not the worst. The worst is yet to come.